So ServiceSpace is an incubator of generosity-driven gift economy projects. And we started by building websites for nonprofits in the Silicon Valley in the late 90s. And we just went to a homeless shelter and we said, we want to help, we don't know how, what can we do? We ended up building them a website. But it was actually very meaningful for us to contribute in that way. And so we said, hey, let's do it again. And so we just kept doing it again and again and again. And where we ended up was creating this whole incubator, this whole field of so many different projects. It started with just building websites for nonprofits. Then it went into web portals for things like daily good news. We don't have enough good news in the world. Then it started to go offline and online. We started to create these games of kindness to encourage kindness in the world. And then it kind of went offline also, doing these awaken circles in living rooms around the world or hosting karma kitchens. And that really, I think underneath it, all the projects have this thread of using generosity as a way to connect with other people and to connect with ourselves. So Karma Kitchen is this place where you walk in to it's like a regular restaurant, but you walk in and you have a meal, and just like any other restaurant, but at the end of your meal, your check reads zero. It's zero because someone before you paid for you, and you have a chance to pay forward whatever you're moved to offer for people after you. And most people think that that kind of thing is crazy. You know, they're like, people are selfish, people are greedy, they're just going to take. No one wants to care for the person after them. And we said, look, if that happens, then we'll stop after 1 week, you know. So we just did it. We just rented a place for 1 week, one weekend, one time, one meal. And we said, if nobody pays forward, then that's it. The game's over. But guess what? People paid forward, and then the next week paid for the week after, and then for the week after, like that. Now in so many locations around the world, 23 or 24 locations around the world, there have been these pop-up experiments that really bring this culture of generosity, this culture of empathy, this culture of deep connection, this possibility of this deep connection that we can live into. It actually could be applied to any place where there's transaction. So one of the shifts that we speak about is a shift from transaction to transformation, and really to get from any place where it's like quid pro quo, tit for tat, right? I give you this, you give me this. That exchange mentality is good in a certain way because it's very focused, but that is also its weakness, that it's very narrow, right? It's not multidimensional. A relationship is much more multidimensional. So how can you move from transaction to relationship? And then in a field of relationships, transformation arises. So to really go from transaction, which is our world is so transactional in every single thing. It's like, what have you done for me? And that's what I will do for you. To go from there to, you know, really awakening a kind of spirit of transformation will happen if we have a context for relationships in between. And I think places like Karma Kitchen show us the way of how we can create spaces where it's multidimensional, where it's relational, where there's a possibility for transformation. So I think there are multiple isms in the world, and each have their pros and cons. But in each ism, there's a kind of sense of coercion. And generosity and coercion don't go hand in hand. So you can't actually make people do this. You can't actually put it into a cookie cutter approach. And that's where I think this sort of transcends the isms in that, because it just won't work with you. You know, you can't put a gun to somebody's face and you will be generous. Like, it just doesn't work. So in that sense, I think it can't be boxed into an ism that as neatly as we would like. But I think the idea of it is very much opposite to the idea of traditional economics, which says that people aim to maximize self-interest, right? That people are fundamentally greedy. And this is saying that maybe they're not. You know, that maybe if you have a strong enough context, people will respond to generosity with greater generosity. People will respond to, and there are these regenerative resources that we have. Like if we smile, we want to smile more, right? It's not degenerative. A lot of resources in our world are degenerative in the sense that they, as you use them up, you have less of it. But there are many resources that are regenerative. And I think compassion and generosity and kindness are in that category. Yeah, I think it's a yes and. I mean, I think ultimately all systems are going to have its limitations, but I think there is a way to tweak certain systems in a certain direction. And I think you can, for example, a lot of countries at a very meta level, right? A lot of countries are measuring GDP as the rate of well-being, as the rate of progress. But you can actually have so many other forms of metrics, right? We know Bhutan, although it's a very small country, Bhutan has been doing gross national happiness, right? And it's not just Bhutan now. There are so many other countries around the world that are saying that, hey, if we have a natural disaster, GDP goes up. If we have crime, GDP goes up, right? If I'm sick, GDP goes up. But how is that a good metric then? Right? So it's, you know, so I think a lot of people are asking those questions of what are alternative metrics in existing systems, so we can, you know, start to tweak them and nudge them in a certain other direction. Well, there's a lot of research on how generosity is great for you. You live longer, your health is better, your relationships are better, you have a lot more meaning. So it's kind of a no-brainer. In fact, in Berkeley, at UC Berkeley, I was just talking with one of the professors who's one of the leading researchers of compassion around the world, Dacher Keltner. And Dacher was saying that, you know, you go into a hospital, and if these people in the hospital just have visitors who care for them, even if they're strangers and not family, the amount of times they need to come back to the hospital actually goes down. Right? Because you're held by the resilience that deep relationships provide. And I think we're lacking that in our world today. I think science is very clear that we need deep ties to cultivate our social fabric. And that fabric will actually provide resilience for a lot of the times when we tumble, when we suffer, when we fall. And we, at the moment, don't have that. And I think all our technology is actually pushing us in the direction of not deep ties, but actually cheap ties, right? So ServiceSpace, in a way, we started with 4 people, and 4 of us volunteering to build a website for a nonprofit. And then we came home and we told all our friends about it. And we were like, hey, this giving thing is fantastic. You should try it. Don't wait till you retire. Just do it now. No matter where you are in your life, like give a little bit and that'll change you. And because that was our experience. And so that spread by word of mouth. And that's been true even now. It touches millions of people every month. And it's just been these sort of ripple effect. So we don't actually think about scale and trying to change the world. It can be a real trap because then you start taking shortcuts to get there. But instead, if you just kind of work on deepening the relationships, then if it's really touching people, they will go and tell their friends, right? If I'm sitting in a with toll booth, right? Like if I have to pay toll for my car, all of a sudden I realize, wait, the car in front of me has just paid for my toll. I'm going to come home and tell everybody on the family dining table because it's a real, authentic, genuine experience. It's not like I'm selling some branded good, you know. For us, that's been the experience, that it has scaled, but it has scaled because of word of mouth, right? And internet helps, right? Well, I mean, I think it's very important to get into, to be the change you wish to see in the world, as Gandhi said, that we should live into our values. And what I always recommend is everyone should go out and do a small act of kindness. Right? Do something small for someone you don't know and trust that that ripple will reach out into the world where it needs to.